the world's first shared computer, allowing everyday devices, desktop, laptops, to contribute CPU and GPU to power this edge compute network. They have access to an extremely fast, performant edge compute network that runs the application closer to the end user, and that's why it's much faster than data centers.
This material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide accounting, legal, or tax advice, or investment recommendations, or an official statement of Presto or its affiliates.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Presto Research Podcast. I'm your host, Min, and today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Peter.
Hi.
And Jaehyun.
Hello.
And today we are very excited to bring our special guest today, Butian, the founder of Blast Network. Butian, great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Great to be here. Feeling awesome. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yep. So why don't we just kick off with your story? How did you first get into crypto and what made you start building Bless?
Yeah. Back in 2017, that was the ICO era. That's when I first got into crypto. And first by doing a project, also a DePIN project before DePIN was kind of a thing. For that one, we work with data, try to supply those kind of analytics for the marketing or manufacturers to gain some insights into consumer behavior. And then I spent some time on the other side of the table doing investment, working with Lightspeed and GC Ventures, also run a hedge fund that deploys delta neutral strategies in DeFi space. And it was 2021 during an NFT NYC event that I met my now co-founder of Bless, Michael, who was back in the day a researcher at Binance. And he looked around for, building something that requires off-chain coordination for running things that it's impossible to run on-chain. And that's kind of the basis of what Bless is today. And then we sort of got together, and I personally felt that it's extremely exciting, something that is a paradigm shift. So started from there. We've been building now over 3 years, growing Blast from, everything that was from a scratch to now over 5 million nodes across the globe.
So I guess for people hearing Blast for the first time, and I know it's somewhat technical project, so what's the simplest way to describe what Blast Network is?
Yeah, so we're building the world's first shared computer, allowing everyday devices like desktop, laptops to contribute CPU and GPU to power this edge compute network. So that is what we do. To further break it down, for consumers like me, myself, or even my mom, my grandma, for example, they can be part of this sharing economy, pretty much by doing nothing. They just run basically they download a Chrome extension. That's how they run a node. And for developers, enterprise businesses, what it means is that they have access to an extremely fast, performant edge compute network that runs the application closer to the end user. And that's why it's much faster than, for example, data centers.
Right. Who would you say are your competition in this space?
If we kind of look beyond Web3, there are a couple of existing enterprise players in this field. For example, Cloudflare Workers and some other relatively smaller scale companies who specialize in edge computing, like Fly.io, Fermion, and also AWS, Google Cloud, and those bigger players. They also have this kind of product offerings when it comes to edge computing.
Yeah, why don't we go into more, product kind of specific questions? Jaehyun, do you want to ask them?
Yeah, sure. Such an honor to ask to this sophisticated project. So this question is more about how the users can actually feel safe and provide their idle computing resources to the Blast network. So as far as we know, Blast Network runs on like user contributing computing tasks in a WebAssembly based sandbox, which is usually typically regarded as a like secure way to isolate the code execution from the local working environment. So, but that said, it's also a known issue that like these kind of sandbox techniques can sometimes be vulnerable to things like sandbox escapes, especially when the runtime has flaws. Or unlike like servers in a controlled data center like AWS or Cloudflare, which those are all controlled in like coordinated systems, edge computing devices are often deployed in public, like semi-public or like any kind of like easily accessible environment, such as like retail stores, like homes, right? And these devices are usually like vulnerable to side channel attacks, which typically rely on such like leaked information that is not actually part of the intended output, but is like somehow correlated with some internal computation. So in summary, so is there anything that you can share, like what kind of like security audits or stress tests or any kind of external reviews you've done that you can ensure your WebAssembly-based sandbox environment can be broken out of? And how confident are you that it holds up against like real-world attack techniques?
Wow, it's very impressive. I have to say first that how deep you look into the stack and the technology. We need to hire you for some deeper research.
Thank you.
But to answer the question, first, the sandbox is a secure runtime environment that provides the base layer, like you said, right? That isolates the machine and the code that's running within the sandbox. So both ways, it provides this kind of protection. And then on top of it, we also have end-to-end encryption. Because WebAssembly is this kind of binary executable that's very close to the machine. And even by kind of breaking into the code, you can only see the random binaries like 1010 that you're not able to extrapolate meanings out of. But for people that are in the tech space, like hackers, I mean, it's kind of common to say that anything is not like 100% secure, right? It's only secure right now because someone hasn't yet broke into it, right?
Exactly.
So for that kind of precautions, like preventative ways that we kind of make sure the security is guaranteed is also by having verifiable compute as an additional sidecar that developers can choose to use. Say, for example, if you don't trust the node that's executing your code, right? You can either first require some zero knowledge proof to verify the execution, or have this what we call is dynamic consensus. Similar to how a blockchain ledger forms this consensus, right? It's trustless. It's the nodes that only the participating nodes in executing this task will have this quorum of consensus. And if, say, one node somehow they fail to provide the execution result as supposed, that will not affect the execution result. So that's additional layer of protection. And then the third thing I would say is the kind of use cases that is supported by this edge compute network, and also the nature of having this decentralized edge compute network is for some use cases that requires either permissionless or trustless executions. This is actually, the infrastructure to provide this kind of service. Whereas if it's just a very typical workload that can be very well executed with the existing, centralized providers, then the competitive advantage is only within the cost reduction that we are able to provide. So I'd say in a case-by-case situation, the company or the developer will make their judgment as in which one is more suitable for their application.
I see. That's amazing. Actually, you also answered my like following question as well. Like the next question that I have prepared was that, like, like in these kind of like edge computing environments, like we are assigning certain like computing tasks to untrusted and decentralized nodes, right? Then I was actually curious, like, how do you guys can ensure that like those kind of tasks can actually be executed correctly, not just like superficially? But I think you already provide like the full answer for that question. So like from your words, then can we say that as like you guys detect those kind of like faulty or like malicious computation from some verifiable proof, right? Like some remote attestation, like consensus-based like proof, right?
Yeah, and I say that in today's world, whereas autonomous agents is becoming more and more capable of servicing human needs or being, a big part of our work. And this calls for a whole lot of changes to the existing internet infrastructure.
Yeah.
Previously, people, they kind of coordinate, you kind of hire some sort of service through a lot of communication. There's a lot of friction in it. Was agents for coordinating amount, even a swarm of agent or different parties that runs different APIs, they would require some sort of autonomous model of cooperation, right? And that is really the shift in the existing internet infrastructure, is that to provide this kind of permissionless or autonomous mode of collaboration through an infrastructure that is trustless, that takes out the human verification or decision part out of this process to reduce the friction.
I see. Yeah, thanks for the great answer. Yeah, this is actually the last question from my side. So we talked about some like security issues and the first two questions. The last one is about like performance. So from your testnets or any kind of like test environments, test beds, do you guys have like any kind of real world metrics on the task latency or throughput? So in other words, that can you describe any kind of like scenarios where like those kind of device heterogeneity or like geographic dispersion among nodes cause some bottlenecks? Or if there weren't any of those such obstacles, what would the secret recipe be?
Yeah, great question. So we did some benchmarking for the kind of latency. The blast network currently have sub-millisecond latency, and as we expand the network further, we can effectively reduce it to around 20 milliseconds to support the real-time processing requirements for a lot of those applications. And we have currently over 800 petaflops of the capacity. That's basically comparable to, I forgot how many exactly supercomputers for processing a lot of those, for example, LLM tasks. There's another factor beyond the technical infrastructure that basically allows us to have the supply and demand balanced out for some of those geographic regions where the application demand is higher. And this is kind of this elastic demand part where the first is through economic incentives. There may be some short-term shortage of the supply of the node, but by increasing the incentives, it makes more sense for people to join the network for an extremely popular geographic regions. And the other part is, for developers utilizing the network, the cool thing is that they don't have to worry about where their users are and therefore set up more nodes, because everything is done like automatically scaled to where the end users are. So as the network basically aggregates all those nodes across the globe, right? We actually have this Uber-like matchmaking that to achieve kind of this global optimization, so that applications sharing the nodes and also end users typically follow similar patterns across the application in terms of their geo distribution.
I see. So just for curiosity, do you guys also have like plans for investments for like deploying the nodes by your own to the area that where the nodes are not much deployed?
Yeah, I mean, it's already possible. You can basically deploy your nodes where your application is serving the end user. And also within this heterogeneous device design that we have, basically a developer have the option to require certain functional or hardware specs. So in a way, it's possible that you only require a particular setup config of the device to be able to run your application. So only those qualified devices are involved in a roll call when a workload comes into the orchestration queue.
Oh, so what I meant was like, does the Bless Network Foundation have any plan to deploy your own node? The foundation will invest and deploy you guys' own node on certain areas.
Currently, we don't have any plans to deploy our own nodes. We remain operating as a infrastructure or network operator, other than hardware owners. So maybe in the future, if it makes sense, then we'll consider. But for now, I think we're just focused on being this software layer provider.
How hard it is to deploy a node in Blast Network? How would you describe it?
Yeah. So for an average user, you basically just go to the Chrome store to download a Chrome extension, and you just sign up, and off you go. For some of those more tech savvy or professional grade operators, they can choose to install the SDK on their machine and just keep it running.
Can we move on from product side of discussion? Okay, yeah. So, Butian, just to shift the gear a little bit, I want to ask you about the Tokenomics that you recently released, I guess, a couple of weeks ago or so. You know, since ever since maybe the beginning of last year, especially in the altcoin space, I think that there's been a lot of noises around the high FTV, low float type of tokenomics causing, I guess a lot of noises in the market, and so given all that backdrop, can you just talk a little bit about the thinking process that went behind your design, the design of your tokenomics?
Yeah. So for us, we have this dual token mechanism. Basically, the kind of like the compute point is put on chain as the time token. So that is like the mining reward for node operators. And they can, after receiving the reward, choose to immediately swap to the Bless token, which you could think of it as almost like owning a share of this Blast network. Or they can stake their time token and then basically get multiplier of their reward when they choose to unstake and get Blast token in the future. So this kind of design, it basically provide a modular approach for the way that we share the revenue, and also making sure that node operators, they can have constant income from providing compute to the network. So the Blast token, in a nutshell, there is a revenue share model where the network revenue, 90% of it will be used to buy back the Blast token so that we can also distribute the reward or the revenue to the token holders and the node operators.
And the revenue comes from who?
Yeah, the revenue comes from the demand side of the network. So applications that use the Blast network for deploying their workload on this edge compute network.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, these revenue are to be paid in fiat. Is that right?
So that is in the future. The design is that the reward will be paid in fiat. Once we get there, as we kind of have a smooth process for getting also enterprise as well as Web3 project to be able to pay in either fiat or stablecoin or some other tokens or even their own project tokens. But for now, we're keeping the reward token as is. So the kind of design is kind of in an analogy like, if you work for a company, you get both the salary and the equity carry of the company stock. So yeah, the kind of salary is like time token and the equity stock is like the Blast token.
Got it. And then, so what's been the response so far after you announced your tokenomics? And has there been much feedback from the community?
Yeah, I think the community is kind of excited as they sense that we are closer to launching also the token side of things. And I think what is most exciting to the community as we receive the feedback is people really like this revenue share model. And also as an open source project, Bless is basically free to use in terms of the tech stack. So everyone can build on top of each other. And we have also a grant system in place to also reward developers that are providing public good to the ecosystem and the Blast network.
I guess more of a general market industry question. So do you believe like DePIN is going to be a big thing in crypto or is there any more bullish themes that you are seeing in crypto market?
Yeah, I think DePIN has to be a big part of the crypto economy because infrastructure in itself is really the backbone of all the innovations, all the kind of applications that's built on top of them, right? And by decentralizing it, just from a pure economic perspective, it makes more sense. That's why in the previous internet age, we're seeing some of the innovations happen from the business model perspective, like the Airbnb, the Uber, the DoorDash, everything that has to do with utilizing the decentralized manpower or infrastructure to lower the cost and to reduce the friction and making this, service more, make the service more efficient, right? And I think decentralized infrastructure or DePIN are exactly servicing that purpose. And in this kind of hyperscaling age of AI and other innovations.
I mean, for normal DePIN projects, what we are currently seeing is there are lots of supply, but there aren't really a lot of demand coming in, right? So is there anything that's special that Blast Network is doing to get the demand side of the business or?
Yeah, I totally get this question that you're asking. It's almost like a systematic issue that we've been facing for a very long time, not just for decentralized infrastructure, but just for Web3 infrastructure as a whole. And the way that we are able to combat this situation is basically to go to market and adopt enterprise type of services and onboard those usages as well. Because what we realize is that in order for a decentralized infrastructure to be, widely useful, we need to not emphasize the fact that it's decentralized. It has to be better in terms of user experience, in terms of cost, in terms of the availability and all that, better than the existing infrastructure, in order to give users this motivation to switch. So I'd say, that's like what we have found out and are focused on is to scaling not just the Web3 side, but mostly the enterprise side of the business.
Pierre, do you have more to ask or?
Yeah, maybe, I mean, you kind of answered it, but maybe I wanted to kind of phrase it in a slightly different way. So, I mean, the history of a DePIN is quite long, right? So going as far back as Filecoin, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it kind of overlaps with what Min asked, but, despite such a long history, it's quite hard to say that the DePIN has really taken off at this point, right? In your view, what do you think has been the bottleneck? And I guess, you mentioned the user experience, but what are the things that kind of prevents the users from having a good experience with the services provided by the DePIN players?
Yeah, I think for a DePIN or the decentralized infrastructure to be as robust as centralized infrastructure, there are quite a lot of hurdles that companies need to overcome. For example, coordinating among different, for our case, for example, different types of hardware devices, and people that are running Node may go online and offline as they wish. So those are the things that is very different in terms of how centralized infrastructure is set up. But I think the key is that we also need to utilize decentralized infrastructure for where they're good at, not just completely, copying what centralized infrastructure is doing right now. So I think in terms of as like companies' strategy, it has to start with where are the gaps that centralized infrastructure isn't fulfilling right now, and how we can effectively address those kind of customer needs. So in terms of, the kind of use cases, what is prohibiting some of those innovative use cases or applications to even exist today? Those are the angles that decentralized infrastructure projects or companies have to think and really think hard, and also validate by providing the products to customers and through trial and error, different iterations that improve the product offering until this comes, this like massive scale of adoption happens.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think when you look at all the blockchain applications that have taken off recently, there are certain element of centralization that helps or address the user experience. You could argue that even stablecoins, like the fiat-backed stablecoin, has some certain centralized elements to it that makes the user experience more superior, right? And then same thing with maybe Hyperliquid. You could argue that there's a centralized element there that contributes to the better user experience, and something like a Polymarket also.
Yeah.
You can say that, yeah. So I think maybe the answer to promoting more adoption is mixing with some centralization element in order to improve the user experience, and maybe that's the way to go.
I think ultimately there's not such thing as something is pure centralized or decentralized, right?
Yeah,
we see a lot of things that work these days. For example, Polymarket. Some people may argue that its Oracle is centralized, which is a key component of a Polymarket. And for example, Hyperliquid, they have similar issues, like the front end isn't decentralized. But basically, like all people need a front end to access the protocol. So I think it doesn't really matter as whether they're completely decentralized or not. What matters is that I think realistically, it's always this kind of game theory as who has the power and control of a system. By centralized, I think what we mean is there is a single party that can control everything, and there's no one else can either veto or change those decisions. So in decentralized protocol, this isn't the case. As in, for example, just as Blast Network, let's say there are things that run on the network that we as a company we can even control or switch off, right? I think that's the kind of spirit of decentralization, is that something is built by people, powered by people, owned by people, not just controlled by the development team behind it.
I guess last question, I normally just ask this for fun. Do you have any Bitcoin price prediction for 2025, end of 2025?
End of 2025. I have a very optimistic prediction and also a very pessimistic.
By the way, we put 210K for Bitcoin price prediction. So
how did you put it? I'm curious now.
It's just roll the dice.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. It's based on MVRV ratio, 3.5 times the MVRV ratio.
Yeah, you obviously have some technical support for this prediction. I don't know. I think, well, to make it interesting, I may just throw a number that is quite not expected. I'd say it goes to 500K.
Wow. That makes me feel better that mine is not too outlandish.
And if I'm the closest to the price prediction, do I get a Bitcoin or something?
Well, we'll have to we'll have to ask him. I mean, Min's a Bitcoin. He has a lot of Bitcoin. Maybe Min can spare some Bitcoin for you.
Yeah, spare
true,
me
but,
some.
I could send you some, I guess, maybe one Ripple or something.
Yeah, that's better than nothing.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you, Butian, for joining us, and see you all next week.
That's fun. Yeah, thank you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.